So I'm Karin Fisher-Golton, author of My Amazing Day, which we will be talking about today. And I also am the author of some adaptations of folk tales for a reading program for people with dyslexia, and some poems for adults that are in anthologies. And I'm also a children's book editor, so I'm sort of a fairy god author on many, many books, picture books through YA and activity books. I do everything from developmental editing to line editing to copy editing. And I just love the creative process. Um, I love children's books. I've loved them all my life. I have some background in elementary school teaching. Like all my work has either been working with kids or writing. I've done some technical writing and writing children's books.
If you have a few minutes when we're done, you should check out her blog. I had a lot of fun reading it and just reading all of her background, and she has poetry that she's written up there and just how to be really playful with words and language with kids. But so you have this very varied background, although like you said, it's all related to children and children's books. How did you actually, what was your journey to becoming an author?
Well, in some way, that was really the very first thing I wanted to do. My mom's parents owned a business machine store and they sold typewriters. So we had typewriters around when I was very young. And my mom says before I could even write with a pencil, I was typing stories on a typewriter. So I've always loved creativity. When I was in second and third grade, we had a big class. So we had a lot of independent work. And when we were done, we had free time. And I always used it to make stories. But I also have a lot of interests. So I went lots of directions. At one point in college, I had taken classes in 18 different departments. And so I did get a teaching credential, but I'm a little bit introverted for classroom. It was taking all my energy. So there was a point in my life where I just looked and thought about everything I wanted to do and wrote it down. And I went back to that very first thing I wanted to do, writing books for children. And I thought, if I do that, I can learn about all these other things.
Right.
So it was at that point that I said, okay, everything I do is going to be towards that, you know. So I actually got a job doing technical writing at that time because I was like, I will be writing. But that's when I started moving in that direction.
That's interesting. That's a great way to bring in all of your interests, but also as a fellow introvert, that's such a neat way to kind of still work on your interests and connect with children, but maybe do it just in a different way. I love that. And so let's go ahead and talk about your book, My Amazing Day. Can you tell us just a little bit about the book itself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The twin.
I can hold it up so you can talk.
Thank you. So the book, it was actually not my idea. It was, so if you can see on the cover, there are three names here. My name, and then Lori Chung is a wonderful photographer who takes these pictures. She's a pet photographer and a portrait photographer, and she takes pictures full of life. And then Elizabeth Iwamia is a designer that just puts words and images together in a way that makes such great harmony. So they had this idea that they wanted to start babies and toddlers on lifetime habits of gratitude. And they wanted to make a book. And so they knew that I was an author, and they reached out to me. And it was interesting because people over the years have known that I write books, and sometimes people come to me with ideas, and a lot of times it'll be like, oh, that's a neat idea. But that I was just like, yes, because gratitude has been so powerful for me in my life. I knew that when I notice what I'm grateful for, it makes those wonderful times even better. And I knew that it has been something that's gotten me through really hard times. Like what times when I've been really low, sometimes just like noticing the littlest thing, like, oh, that beautiful color of magenta, like this is really hard, but I can see that color of magenta. And so so I love that idea, and I love the idea of working with them. And so that's how the story began. And then it was a really interesting challenge because, um, the gratitude is a very abstract concept for very
Yeah.
young people that we were trying to reach. So I thought it was interesting to think about how to do that.
Mhm.
Just trying to think which direction to go with that. But yeah, so because I wanted to say one of the first things that I did when this project started was I started researching gratitude.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I want you all to know about this because it was so amazing. I like I said, I already knew from my own life a sense of the power of gratitude, but I started looking into the science, and what I learned was that at the beginning of the 21st century, psychology started looking into positive emotions. Before that, there was lots of research on anger and sadness and depression, but switched into learning about joy and happiness, and gratitude was one of those things. And one of the early studies on it just blew my mind, because this was a study that professor did, and I brought my notes here, so I'd have the names. It was Dr. Robert Emmons at University of California, Davis, and Dr. Michael McCullough at University of Miami. So they were working with their students, and they had them write in journals. One group wrote something they were grateful for. One group wrote something that was just neutral, this happened. One group wrote something they were unhappy about. And they did this just once a week for 10 weeks. And there were effects from just one time a week for 10 weeks. And it was not just the things you might expect, like, which no small thing, but more positive, optimistic outlook. But it included sleeping better, having less pain. I'm going to look at my notes again so I don't miss any of the good stuff. And this is all on my website. I've got an Our Amazing Days website, and I've got a gratitude science link where I sum this up. Yeah, they were getting more exercise. They were connecting better to others. They had more inclination to help people once a week for 10 weeks. So just think, and we can talk a little bit later about how we can do this with kids and with ourselves. But it's just, it's about expressing gratitude. So back to the book. So.
Uh-oh.
Identifying and
A
expressing.
little frozen. Hopefully she doesn't drop off completely.
I froze?
Yes, just a little bit. You said back to the book.
Okay, back to the book.
Yeah.
So then I had learned that what made gratitude powerful was identifying what you're grateful for and expressing it, because it is an emotion, but it's like something when we identify it, it's like, oh, there it is, then it expands and we get it. When I thought about this with very young children, I thought about that amazing sense of wonder that they have, at that age, where just, it's so great to be around them, because it's like, whoa, there's a bug there, look at that, and oh my gosh, this taste. And so I just thought of putting some of that wonder into words. So, that's what this book is. And I was really committed to it being nothing that, it would all be everyday things, nothing that was like expensive or a special day. So today was amazing. I'll just look at the beginning of this. In the morning, I heard singing. I ate squishy and sweet. I'm going to skip ahead to when she goes outside. I flew. Just that simple thing of being on an adult's knees and flying through the air. So I was going for the five senses and putting words to those experiences. And then in the end, just the habits we get into. She gets to the end. She's warm, cozy, and just right. So that's a time when we can look back at our day. And then she says, thank you, linking to those things in the book. Thank you, bird. Thank you, bananas. And then here's the thank you, knees. And it ends with thank you, family. And then the one that's there all along when we do these things, thank you, me.
I have to tell you, so I've read this with my kids, And when I was reading this with my daughter, we read it at bedtime. The one that surprised her was the thank you me. She hadn't really thought of it. It's like, thank you me. And so it was a nice like opportunity for us to talk about why would she be thanking herself. So I love that you included that.
Oh, good. I love that because, yeah, we're the ones that are there all along when we do these things. We're the ones that notice the color and taste the food and, zip up our jacket when we're a little bit cold. So, so I want to have that there.
And that must have been interesting. Like you said, I mean, I love that you did the research into really what the science of it was and then how to convey this abstract concept, to very young kids. You were so thoughtful about how you did it. And like you said, this was a team effort. What was that collaboration like so you had the photographer, you had the designer, and then you had this model who was very young. So how did that whole process work?
Well, it was wonderful. Like I said, I love creating and teaming up with people, and I've always been I've been a visual person, so it was just great to get to be involved in the art part of this because we're all very involved in all of it and bouncing ideas off each other. So that was wonderful. So we had once we had a manuscript, the little girl Lily, it's her name. She was 20 months old then. So we did about smelling spices. The little jars have big smells. I don't think I can have the whole thing in the frame there, but she had a stand-in, and it was a stuffed kangaroo, and we put it in the chair so that we could set up the lighting and the angles and everything. And then when we were all ready, then we would put her there so that she would not try her patience.
Great idea.
Yeah. But the other thing that was really cool is that we tended to say the words to her and kind of let her interpret them. So we'd have it all set up, and this is my favorite is with the story of this page says, "Green was all around me." It's really a reference back to what I talked about, noticing when I was younger and how just this color would cheer me up. But we held her up in this tree and we just said those words, "Green is all around you, Lily, green is all around you." And she did this. So nobody said to her, like, reach out your hands.
Right.
So that was her part.
I love that.
Yeah. And then, I was going to tell you the other story. The other challenge, the most challenging picture was this one with this dog.
Because you had the kid and the dog.
The kid and the dog. So we had eyes blinking, eyes looking different directions, getting distracted, tongues hanging out where you didn't want them. It was over 300 pictures to get this more than one session.
But what a great picture. I mean, it was worth it.
I know, it's all worth it. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And I did mention, I think when we were waiting for you to come back on, about the fact that she's multiracial, the little girl, Lily, you said.
Yeah.
And the team that was working on this, you had people from diverse backgrounds. And you and I had talked about when we were getting ready for this, how nice it is to have books. I mean, that we need both. We need books that teach kids about race and talk about diversity, but how nice it is to have books that talk about other subjects also be diverse so they can see themselves in the characters. Can you talk a little bit about that and why that was really important for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, going back to my teaching experience, so I went to school to become an elementary school teacher in 1991 and 92, so that's like 30 years ago now. And even then, we were talking about the lack of diversity in children's books. So yeah, in some ways it's really shocking to me, that it's been 30 years and we're still struggling on that, though we're definitely, making progress, and yay, Multicultural Children's Book Day for a big part of that. Um, so, well, so many big parts of it, but a part of it. So anyway, now I lost my train of thought. Oh,
Or just about the diversity
oh
in
yeah.
this
So
book.
we were talking about that then. So anyway, that's always been in my mind. I mean, I think probably was before then, but that really woke me up to when I became a teacher. And I was lucky to be in a very diverse class as a student teacher, um, and so. And then I'll say, my own background. I'm from a mixed family of Jewish and not Jewish. And so I also had the experience of not only seeing my family's traditions and books. So that was important. But I think my instinct when we had this and there were all these different things in a day was to do something that a lot of books do, which is like have a different kid from different background for each one. And it was Elizabeth that said, but this is about saying thank you at the end of the day. So let's have a continuity and let's have one kid. And I think because we had the opportunity to have this kid that is not, well represented in children's books at all, that just seemed perfect. And I'm so glad for I love that continuity. I'm glad that she said that. And I'm glad to have this sweet face there. And I have seen it, with the multiracial Asian families, and Asian families can just be really moved to see her face on the book. But I also think it's important for all of us, because back to Multicultural Children's Book Day, I just love the hashtag and the thought, read your world.
Right.
And I feel like it has this double meaning. It's both like we want to read your world, we want to read our own world, we want to see our own selves in the world, but it's also like read your world. Your world, our world is a diverse world. So let's have that show up in books.
I love that. Yeah, and I'm sorry, part of my job is to watch the clock. And so we are going to have to wrap it up. And this is such a big topic because I really did want to dive into talking about gratitude. So I'm afraid we're going to have to do a little shorter discussion than I think we were hoping for. But before you go, can you talk a little bit about gratitude practices like that you have for yourself, but also especially about how we can teach children? Of course, this being one of the big tools, having a book like this is really helpful. But do you have other tips for parents or just for people for themselves?
Yeah, and boy, that time flew. So
I know, right? Yeah.
So yes, my primary thing is like gratitude. We're teaching how to access it and express it, but of course, gratitude is just there, and so it's identifying it. And I think there are so many wonderful traditions that people have come up with. There are jars and putting words on chains, and you can put things in jars and pull them out later. But I think the most important one is to have something as a family, and it could be bedtime, it could be mealtime. My family, we tend to do it mealtime, where you go around and people say things they're grateful for. And the reason for that is it gives us all ideas, in addition, then it's connecting. But the thing about gratitude is there are so many things to be grateful for. There's the little things like I've talked about, like taste and touches. There's the, things about big things like babies being born and accomplishments. And there's our health. And, even when things are hard, like in COVID times, it's helped us notice like, oh gosh, I really miss doing that. But isn't it great that I know I have that thing that I love to do? So there's so many ways to look at it. And when we share, we get to hear that. And I also want to say with families to just encourage you, if you do go in a circle like that, gratitude should not be a chore. Like nobody has to say anything. And sometimes people are having bad days. Sometimes kids need a while to get something. So just always be like, if you want to say something. And especially when my son was little, we'd have lots of times where he wouldn't say anything. But, I just think they're picking it up. They're getting the idea. And now he's a teenager, and it's just one of the joys of me to hear like the things that he identifies and comes up with. And I'm just so grateful for that.
That's wonderful. And I love that you make that point to not make it into a chore for them. And I also, again, put in a plug for your website. You have your own and also the one for My Amazing Day that you have the gratitude science that you were talking about earlier, but also about your own gratitude practices. And if I remember right, there's even a video about gratitude during COVID times.
That's right.
You know,
Yeah,
especially for now. So you guys, I know where this might be a little shorter discussion than maybe we could get into more. But you can always check it out on her website. She has a lot more resources on there also. And of course, be sure to check out this book. This is really great for young kids. Although I've read it with my older kids too, and they enjoyed it as well.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, and I want to say,
Yes.
Reach and Teach in San Mateo, California. I thought they might resonate for people there, and those are places that carry my book. I notice it's dwindling on Amazon right now. So I gotta put some other options, and then you can also always buy it from my website. And if you make a note, I'm happy to sign it for someone.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving for those that are going to be celebrating it. And thank you. This is a really perfect one to do this time of year. Well, of course, any time of year, but now is one time when people are really thinking about it.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everybody.